Welcome to Season 3 of the Predator Podcast. On this podcast, we'll talk about all things predator hunting. If you're a predator hunter or wanting to become one, you're in the right place. Here's your host, Drew Schlim.
All right, guys. Here we are, Season 3 of the Predator Podcast, and this is the first episode of Season 3. I have an awesome guest on joining me today. I have Joseph Wirth with Close Encounter Guided Predator Hunts. He's out of the neighboring state to me, Illinois, just to the south, and we are going to talk about some predator hunting today. So, Joseph, thanks for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. Appreciate you having me.
So obviously, as two Midwest and some would call it up north coyote hunters for the coyote hunting world, I feel like have very different hunting than you'll see in the West, but we find a way to put down numbers. And obviously, if Joseph's a guide, he obviously does lots of different hunting with different people and all over the place. So Joseph, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about how you got to guiding. Kind of just give us the rundown of you and what got you to where you are now.
Sure. Let me think. I'm 41 now. I started predator hunting when I was 30. Really, I started hunting in general when I was 30. I kind of had a late start to the game. I grew up shooting, but not hunting. So,
right.
But anyway, you know the path. You try it out, you fall in love with it, you go down the rabbit holes, and you want to learn more and get better, and just keep upping the ante on what you're doing. And I've always been. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing. I'm always trying to kind of push the limits of it and do things that are a little unorthodox, that are like hunting coyotes with a bow. Like going out at night in Illinois with a white light and a shotgun, like just little things like that that are going to kind of just, if I fail, I fail, but I'm going to learn something in the process.
Right.
But as far as getting into the guiding, it was pretty early on. And I was having a lot of success, and I was getting messages from people, "Hey man, have you ever considered guiding?" And I thought about it, and I was like, well, I don't know if I want to turn my hobby into work. I think Mark Twain said one of the keys to success is turning your vacation into your vocation.
Yep.
There are pros and cons to that. I don't get much trigger time these days.
Right.
Even when I get to go, I'm filming, and it feels like work a lot of times. But,
right.
But that transition into guiding was great for me. I learned exponentially more when I started guiding. I learned so much more about the animal itself, and about people and the psychology behind how we process things while we're hunting. All the way down to the way people put coyotes on a pedestal. They put the kill on a pedestal, and that stress gets to them. It's the difference between taking a kid versus taking an adult who really, really wants to get that kill. And, the kid doesn't feel any pressure. So most of the time when I take kids out on a guided hunt, their parents are there. And the kids a lot of times will shoot 100% while the dad or uncle struggles. So there's a lot of psychology behind predator hunting. And I think that's probably what intrigues me the most about guiding, is the human factor.
Right. Yeah. I never thought of that. No, I totally get what you're saying, because the thing about it is, coyote hunting's, I've taken a lot of people and whatever too, but I take a lot of people turkey hunting and, other kinds of hunting. And the thing about it is like, there's one thing for you or me to go out and, call one in and kill it, but it's another thing to set someone up to do that. It's one thing for you and me to do it, who have done it, many times, but for a new hunter, a kid, whoever, like talking them through that, coaching them through that whole ordeal. And you find holes in your. I'm sure you did it at first. You probably found
Oh,
things
yeah.
that you needed to do better and teach them better. And I got to remember, make sure I tell the next person this.
Yeah, those little mistakes I made early on, I remember they would just eat me up. And
Yeah.
then I'll tell you what point I started making the most progress was when I was willing to watch one walk away in exchange for learning something from it. And I've caught a little bit of grief. I'll post videos every now and then. I'll
Yep.
call in a group of coyotes, shoot one, and just click my safety back on and just watch what they do. That's kind of how got more into the we don't shoot at runners ever.
Right.
Uh, Everything for me is a numbers game. It's statistics.
Yep.
I go on a guided hunt with clients, and a night we get 10 stands in. We only get so many opportunities, so we're trying to maximize what we do on each stand. And I found statistically that we had better odds of hitting and recovering a coyote if it was. I'd rather them shoot if it's stationary at 300 yards than running at 100 yards. Early on,
Right.
I watched a lot of running coyotes get shot at. I could probably count on one hand how many I saw actually get hit.
Yep.
We see all the videos on social media. Everyone wants to post the hero video where they it's funny because they miss it, at 100
Yep.
yards it goes off running, but they roll it up at 400 yards, big
Yep.
dramatic, hit it, rolls 4 or 5 times, looks great. But they don't show the 10 videos prior to that where the coyote made it out of the field alive, or it got hit in the leg and still hobbled out of
Yep.
the field. And so everything becomes a numbers game for what makes us most likely to have success, and
Yeah.
that's what they hit and recovered coyote.
Yep. No, it totally makes sense. I have 100% done that. Exactly what you're saying. You get that one that you rolled up and it looks awesome, but yeah, I blew it the first shot. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, that's one thing that changed for me when I started hunting suppressed. And I know that you guys can't in Illinois,
Mhm.
but that's one thing that changed for me shooting suppressed is now, like, I don't ever feel like I ever need to shoot one running
No.
because they almost always stop. So,
And even without suppressors, because I've hunted with and without them in
yeah.
different states.
Yep.
I just did 2 weeks guiding out in Kansas where all of my clients had suppressors out there.
Yep.
What was funny about that was there were multiple stands where we killed multiple coyotes. There's one video I posted where we killed a quad,
Yep.
and it was really super windy, and you could barely hear the gunshot.
Yep.
And what was funny was we came home, night season started a couple weeks later,
Yep.
and not running suppressors, we had coyotes act the exact same way because coming out of the summer, there are very few guys
Yep.
that hunt them in the summer. I'm probably one of the only ones in
Yep.
southeastern Illinois who do. So, coyotes it's Pavlov's dog. They're the perfect example of conditioning. If they're not really conditioned to fear the gunshot, a lot of times I think it's the actual projectile whizzing by or impacting the ground next to them that scares them more
Right.
than the actual bang. Uh,
Right.
so we were having. I've got some funny videos where I can think of one. There was a coyote. We get out of the truck. I scan to the side. There's a coyote at 50 yards just standing there. I said, "Hey, get out of the truck." Anyway, long story short, we got out of the truck and the coyote walked toward us for some unknown reason. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the guy shot at it at 20 yards and missed. Shot at it again. I stopped it at 40 and missed. And he thought the gun was off. So I thought, let me see it. I'll take a shot and I'll be able to see where the bullet impacts the dirt. No, 10 ringed it. And it just, but I'm like, no, the gun's fine. And,
Yep.
we had a good laugh. Those guys have hunted here. They've
Yeah.
opened my season like 3 out of the last 4 years. They're awesome
Yeah.
guys. But it was, we laughed our butts off because it's like he missed it point blank. And then, but the point of that is that coyote had no idea what a gunshot was, had
Yep.
no idea that it was a danger to him, had no clue. So,
Yeah.
suppressors are awesome. They're great for our ears.
Yes.
I don't know if they help the hunting that much. There are too many variables to say that it's a control in an
Yep.
experiment. So, do I think it helps our ears? Yeah. Do I think it gives us some extra opportunities? Probably.
Yep.
But I've also seen some coyotes stand there and get shot at 3 or 4 times,
Yep.
with no suppressors. So,
Yep.
and that's one of the great things about us only having a 4-month night season.
Right.
If Illinois ever goes to change it, I'm going to be heartbroken. I don't want a year-round night season.
Yeah.
A lot of
Our,
states pressured coyotes year-round because of
ours
that.
is. So
Mm.
yeah, I've totally, I totally see that. And like when I go to Kansas too, it's just so different. Like
Oh my god.
you don't have coyotes that are getting hunted all the time. And I
Mhm.
do think too, another thing that came to mind while we are talking about this is it's, gun deer season here in Wisconsin right now. There's 600,000 people in the woods,
Right.
and there's so many people in the woods hunting, shooting, whatever like that. Do you think the way you look at it, like, does that all these people in the woods shooting at coyotes, bumping them around, like, I mean, that's got to put
Yeah.
some pressure on them indirectly too.
I will not lip squeak at a coyote for the next like 3 weeks because every firearm hunter in Illinois has lip squeaked at every coyote that they've seen,
Right.
up in a tree stand and been winded and busted or shot and missed. And
Yep.
I've this time of year I've seen coyotes out in the field lip squeak at them and they just turn inside out and can't get away fast enough. So
No,
I
I totally believe
guess
that.
it affects them.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I think that, that's just another thing that adds, because I do think that actually like the 2 weeks following deer season are some of the hardest for me. And I think partially because too, there's dead deer. There's a lot of
It can be
food
a
out
factor.
there. I mean, granted, maybe you're not triggering them with a food type sound, but just seems like that all the pressure and all the things that go into it can certainly add an element into it. But I will tell you, I got a picture of a big old male coyote this morning about 8 o'clock, and it was one of the prettiest looking, red with a white face. I was like, oh man, I need to go get him.
It's fun to have a coyote that you can actually target. You
Yeah.
know, we don't get black coyotes here. I've personally never seen what I would call a black coyote. We get a lot of charcoal, brindle,
Yeah.
blonde, red face. We get a lot of variation, a lot of
Yeah.
variation. Um, but I remember one year I had a really pretty brindle coyote, charcoal color coyote that my daughter was 2 seconds away from killing, and as she clicked her safety off, it kind of turned around and ran off, and we were shotgun hunting. And anyway, I was able to go back a couple months later and target it and call it in and kill it. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. It's like having a buck on camera that you really
Yeah.
want to get,
For sure.
to target a specific coyote and get him killed is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's also a lot more challenging than I think people would
Yeah.
think it is, because they move around a lot more than what people realize, I think. They don't just, live in one little woods. Like they
Mm.
usually have a bigger range than, what people would, I think, assume. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Time of year is a major factor for that.
yeah, that too. Yeah, for sure.
That's what's funny about that is I can think of one property where I had the east side of the road. The family group, the litter was born on the west side of the road. Big
Yep.
cornfield, drainage ditches. They were born in one specific section of that drainage ditch. They stayed there all summer.
Yep.
We go back in November, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to kill those because I can't, couldn't do anything with that side of the road. I didn't have access. I was like, oh, no problem. We're going to get a west wind. We're going to call them across the road. We're going to smash that group. They would not cross that road. It was,
Hmm.
I think it was going into January, and it was the second or third time we tried to kill them during the night season, and they were still living in that same drainage ditch and would not cross that road for anything. We never killed a single one out of that group that year. They'd
Huh.
come to the road and would not cross, and it's funny how different family groups act differently.
Yeah.
You get some that are just cover a mile like it's nothing.
Yep.
And I'll say this too: a mile in Kansas is different than a mile in Illinois.
100%
You
agree.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely know what you're saying.
Here, if we hear coyotes howl at a half mile, I'm on the fence of like maybe we can call them in, but
Yep.
probably not.
Yep. 100% agree.
It's that's a long way for here.
Yep.
There are drainage ditches, blocks of timber, rows. And sometimes they'll just blow right through that stuff.
Yep.
but a 10-foot deep drainage ditch that has an 8-foot wide stream of water running through it, they may not want to take a swim.
Yep.
I think it takes the right coyote in the right mood to want to do something like that. But there are a lot of factors here that they make our property small.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and or it takes them just being in the right spot at the right time and having a spot that's convenient for them to cross, or
The
something
more
something along
I
those
do
lines.
this, the more I do this, the more I think proximity is the number one factor. Period.
Yep.
I used, and I still think you can manipulate that with higher volume, time of year, tripping different territorial triggers. Um, but man, the statistically being within a callable distance of those coyotes. Now in Kansas, that's 3/4 of a mile.
Right.
Here, I want to be within like 500 yards of them,
Yep. I
600
completely
yards.
agree. Completely agree. I'm
Yeah,
the same exact way here. It's the same thing for me. If they howl at 900 yards, I'm like,
yeah, mm,
ooh, I don't know if they're gonna come this far.
yeah.
But
Summertime,
then
summer. If I'm targeting a family group in the summer, I want to be within like
oh yeah,
I want to be as close as I can humanly be without them knowing I'm there. And there are times we set up and turn the call on, and because the corn is 8 feet tall and the wind is right and our cover's thick, we can get within 30 yards of them before we turn the call on,
right.
which is chaotic sometimes.
Yeah, it
but
looks like it.
but if they're at 200 or 300 yards, they may not cover that in the summertime.
Yep. 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 No, I completely agree. And I also think too when they get like you get like late into January, February when you get into real like heavy breeding time.
Mhm.
It seems like they won't travel as far then either to me. Like but like they'll sit there and howl or whatever, and then it seems like you just push in, and all of a sudden, snap, here they come.
So I have a theory on that, and you're actually like on the right track to that. I think that that time of year you have your breeding pair.
Yep,
They've established their territory, right? They've kicked
yep,
all the subordinate non-breeding coyotes kind of out of their area. And that could be, if a block here is a mile by a mile, that's their
yep,
block. If they smell, see, hear other coyotes on their block, they're going to push them out. There's one fence row in the middle of it where they're digging their dens out and they want to have their pups. So you've got those, they're hyper territorial. They're going to protect that block like it is theirs. No one else is allowed.
yep,
The other side of that is you have those subordinate non-breeding coyotes who have been pushed out. So they've been pushed out. They have either established an adjacent area as their new territory and they're willing to defend it, or they're just kind of roaming around trying to figure out where they belong and they won't defend anything.
yeah,
So a lot of times that time of year, I take a different strategy and I'll start calling properties that weren't holding coyotes November, December, because those subordinate coyotes are getting pushed out. Um,
uh,
on top of that is when I pull up to a spot and I howl and I hear a pair over here and I hear 3 coyotes howl over here, I'm like, okay, that's going to be my breeding pair. That's going
yep,
to be my subordinate coyotes. I know I can kill that breeding pair, right? If I get in their
yep,
house. So what
yep,
I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that subordinate group. I'm going to get downwind of them, and then I'm going to start with prey distress because if I howl at them and they just had their butts kicked, they want no part of another coyote for a while. So the other side of that is if I howl at them and they've established that as their territory, they may come hard charging right in. But it's a coin flip. Are you going to scare them off or are you going to call them in? So I'll go
yep,
down into them and start with prey distress, hoping to call the subordinate group in. And then I'll go back to the breeding pair and get downwind to them and call them in afterwards because they're going to
yep,
defend their territory like pretty hardcore.
yeah. Those are the ones that are gonna come flying in if you get in there on them. Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. I always compared it to myself, like the way I made it made sense to me was always comparing it to like a whitetail and saying like I would treat it like they're locked down almost like
Mhm.
they're
They'll
together.
only go so far. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
they're not going to go far. They don't want anyone else intruding on them.
Mhm.
But unless you get inside that bubble, they're not going nowhere.
That's exactly
And
right.
um,
I'm
but
not
yeah, the
much
way
of
that
a
you,
whitetail hunter, so I guess I don't think of that analogy. That's a good one.
yeah, but the way that you explain that, it makes complete sense. And there's a lot to kind of unpack there with
Mhm.
start to make. That's why I like being super analytical of your stands, which obviously you are because you have to be successful over and over and over. But to be analytical of your stands so you can tell yourself, hey, there wasn't coyotes, in this spot back
Mhm.
in November, December, but to find yourself to be successful in these situations. And I think a lot of times it is a hard time to hunt just for that sake that you're saying is like
It can be,
about a
yeah.
coin flip, like maybe you thought you had the breeding pair and it was not, and you
Mhm.
howled at them and they're gone, or
There are there is an unlimited number of factors that can cause
yeah,
us to have an unsuccessful stand.
for sure. For
And
sure.
and over the years, you know, it'll eat you up when you have like 3 or 4 dry stands in a row.
Yeah.
It'll start to get in your head a little bit, and then you just have to accept the fact that they might have moved. A deer hunter may have gone and checked the cameras and bumped him out of there. A farmer may have fertilized his field and driven around and bumped him out of there when he got out of his truck to take a bathroom break in the woods. Like you just
Yeah.
never know what happened there that could have affected them. But and that's the talking about the analysis of stands. Part of it is understanding the animal's behavior year round and kind of breaking that down as to the why I hunt a certain way. I hunt, I try to think that I hunt in a way that is most effective for where they are socially at that time of year.
Right.
Now there could be a 2 week window where things completely change.
Yep.
I think a lot of predator hunters plateau there. They just go out and they were killing it on rabbit, they were howling coyotes in, their fight sounds were working great, and then all of a sudden it's like an off switch.
Yep.
That's gonna happen. I don't care how good you are, where you hunt in the country, you're gonna have times like that, period. Um, but I think a lot of guys don't break down that, I call it a coyote's calendar, their time of year, they've got basically 4 times a year, where I think you can hunt a group and kind of have a clean slate because their
Right.
social structure changes.
Right.
But that's just my theory. So
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people do what they do. And then when it
mhm.
doesn't work, it doesn't work. They
Yeah,
either,
they just keep doing the same thing.
yeah, or they don't go for a while or they,
You see guys say, I haven't had any luck lately.
yeah, right.
That's the
Like
go-to.
they're not coming into the call. So I'm
Yeah,
done. I'm not hunting for,
yeah.
I'm going to take the weekend off or whatever.
The only
Yeah.
the only behavior we can control is ourselves. So,
Yep.
like, we're not willing to change what we're doing, we're not gonna have different results.
Right. Right. Nope, I totally agree. Um, okay, I have a ton of questions that have been popping through my head here while we've been talking. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna try to just ask you one at a time as we go. What I'm kind of rewinding back to the beginning of our conversation, but what are the most common mistakes that you see? Like you're taking somebody out, and what are some of the most common mistakes that you have to deal with or try to navigate with your taking people hunting and taking people on guided trips?
So looking at it through the lens of a guide, I don't get to see people go hunt,
Yep.
right? I get my job is to put the animal in front of them. So I don't get to see how they would go through that process.
Yep.
So what mistakes they would make, I have no idea as far as that goes. What I do get to see is people shoot. They make a lot of mistakes shooting, down to shooting fundamentals, the way they don't track the coyote when they're getting ready to shoot, the way they don't anticipate the coyote stopping, the way they don't. Um, Coyotes are finicky animals, right? They're so high strung. I don't know how their hearts don't just explode, right? They come in, you stop them, they stop for 2 seconds, they move again. They stop for 2 seconds, they and rinse and repeat, right? They don't. A lot of shooters don't anticipate that stop because they're going to have a real short window to shoot in. I talked about it on a podcast, the Foxborough podcast, a few weeks ago. Um, we were talking about how I one of the benefits about thermal scopes is you can record, right?
Yep.
So you get to watch what clients are doing when that shot opportunity comes. So I would say the biggest thing is when the coyote's coming in, the coyote's somewhere in their sight picture. To me, I'm generally not going to call a shot unless it's under 200 yards. Um, to me, a 200-yard shot should be made 90% of the time.
Yeah.
If you're somewhat familiar with your weapon, but anyway, so the coyote's just kind of floating around in their sight picture, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop the coyote. Are you ready? Yeah, I stopped the coyote. No shot, no shot, no shot, no shot. I'm like, why are we not shooting? And then the coyote moves right as they shoot. They shoot behind or over, or
Yep.
and it's okay. What do I do different where that coyote would be dead? And I started thinking about it. I'm like, I track my crosshairs on it, and I either unmute the remote or I whimper on a diaphragm or howl on a diaphragm to stop it. Right. So my crosshairs are physically on the animal or just on the front edge in the direction it's going, leading the animal. So I'm anticipating when that coyote's going to stop. And I know when it stops, I got about a second and a half before I need to get that shot off. So, the tripod head I use, I whimper, stops, lock down, shoot. And it's one, not a fluid motion, but it's very coordinated. Um,
Right.
so I would say choosing when to shoot is um, probably the biggest mistake I see people make.
Yeah. No, I could totally see that. I've seen it. I've seen exactly what you're saying.
Mhm.
Coyote's coming in, he stops, and the second he starts to move, someone
I've done
pulls
it.
the trigger. And
Yeah.
oh yes, of course I have too, but it happens because I think what happened, like the way I always saw it was people are trying to get steady or trying to talk themselves through the shot as they're standing there, and then as soon as they start to move again, they think, oh shoot, and they just
Yeah.
kind of that second of
Opportunity
panic.
slipping away, they panic. Yeah.
Yep, that second of panic, and they probably yank on the trigger harder than they probably should, and obviously the whole host of things that can go wrong there, but yeah, that's I think you're 100% right, and I could totally see that. When people come with you, do they use your guns, or how does that
Both.
work?
They do both. Depends on what they want to do. Like I've got some guys traveling in today. I forget where they're from. Somewhere down south. It would be like a 15-hour drive. So they're no, is that those guys? I think they're flying in. So they're using my guns so they don't have to travel with theirs.
Yep.
So I'd say about 50-50. Half use mine.
Okay.
I've got two custom 243s from One Shot Rifles. Um, awesome guns. I mean, just deadly. Then I get guys that bring their own stuff, um, and I've seen every caliber and platform, and if you think of it, I've seen it probably.
Right. Yep.
Just seen a
I'm
lot.
sure you have.
Yeah, and that's why I give a lot of grace when guys use my equipment and they miss. Yeah, it's a trigger they've never pulled and a scope they've never looked through on a ball
Right.
head they've never manipulated. Like there are a lot of factors that go into that, and being familiar with your equipment is massive.
Huge. Yeah. Yeah. What bullet setup and stuff do you have on those custom 243s?
70 grain nozzle ballistic tips. Uh,
Gotcha.
right now, summer months, summer months, I ran a lot of the 58 grain VMAXs.
Yep.
I'm usually not a huge fan of VMAXs in the winter months because sometimes you can get some splash. The
Yep.
little thicker hair does make a little bit of a difference.
Yep.
Thinner haired summer coyotes, I didn't have a bit of trouble with those 58s.
Right.
Um, but there are a lot of really good options. The 70 Varmageddons are good. The 80 nozzle ballistic tips. I like the 70s because they're very flat out of my guns.
Right.
Um, I'm an inch and 3/4 high at 100, which puts me about dead nuts at 300. So
Yep.
just put it in the middle, you'll hit it.
Yeah, on for 0 to 300 is pretty dang good, especially for a thermal. I mean, you're
Mhm.
gonna kill a lot of coyotes with that.
Yeah, and having confidence in your setup too, knowing, man, if I just put these crosshairs in the middle of my over unders, it's gonna kill that thing.
Yeah, for
Should
sure.
should anyway.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, right. Yep. Yep. And then the video aspect too is so handy, especially like even for me still. Like I still miss one every once in a while, and
Yeah.
I'll miss one and just be like, how did I miss that? Like what?
Mhm.
Like I have no idea. And then I'll go back and watch that video, and I'll just have moved
Yeah.
ever so
Yeah.
slightly where I missed literally by a half of an inch, but
Yeah.
they have a lot of air around them, and they're not hard to miss.
Oh man, yeah. That's one thing for me. Kansas was a great example. I'm terrible at judging distance in open country in the daytime. I
Yeah.
always think they're further than they are.
Yeah.
I had this one coyote. It was like 40 yards staring at the call by the time I realized it was there. And it drops down in the ravine, goes up the other side, and I see it, and I'm like, that thing looks tiny. Like it's got to be 300 yards. And I shoot just right over top of it. And I
Yep.
arranged it. It was like 205 or 212 or
Yep.
something like that. I'm like, wow, I missed that by 50%. That's terrible.
Yeah. I saw that video, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I do the same thing with, I've done that at night too, where like, you know, you, sh- I've done it more so like when we shoot one that's close or something and then they take
Mhm.
off, and then they'll check up out there and I, for some reason, always just panic. And that's
Yeah.
one thing that I've had to do better this year. Last year, I missed probably two or three like that. Just I held my crosshairs at the top of their back, and they weren't as far as I thought they were, and I shot right over them.
Yeah. I'm opposite at night where I think they're further than they are. And I let them get too close sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Do you your scopes have rangefinders? Does your scanner? I guess what all equipment are you taking with the guided hunt? You got,
Uh,
what does that look like? You got two hunters, or I
yeah.
guess walk me through that.
Previously, I never ran an LRF on anything. Um, I don't contest hunt anymore. I've played that game. There's not enough money on the planet that can get me to do those again.
Yep.
They're just those 2 night contests will take years off your life.
Yep.
they're a lot.
One nighters take years off your life.
Man, I just that's more work than guiding.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah, now I run an LRF on my scanner. I got a Telos. I run all pulsars. Now pulsars are great. They're a great optic, and I'm not tied to any brand, so I can run whatever I want. Are there better pictures out there? Yeah, iRay has some really good stuff.
Yep.
Uh, but I've never had to send a pulsar in ever.
Right.
No, I
Right.
know other people have had other experiences, um, but I mean, when I have guys travel from across the country, I need my scopes to turn on every time.
Yep.
And I think this is my 8th year doing this, and I've never had one not turn on. So it's hard for me to get away from them. So I'm running a Telos XP50 LRF. I want that rangefinder in my hands because
Yes.
I find the more buttons clients push, the worse off we're probably going to be. Because I've had them accidentally change zeroing profiles before.
Yes.
Wonder why
I can see
they're
that.
hitting a foot high and right. So
I can
just
see that.
don't push buttons.
Yep.
But I do have one now. I have an XL50. It has an LRF, and then I have an XP50 that's
Yep.
not LRF. But that's what I'm. So I provide 2 setups for clients. A typical hunt is me plus 2 clients. Every now and then I'll have 3. Sometimes people bring their own guns. So, um, but yeah, most of the time we meet, we go to we just get right after it.
Yep.
We'll have them dry fire my triggers a few times to kind of get a feel for what they're like.
Yep.
Look through the scope, show them the settings. So the first stand is always a little slow going because we're going through the motions of getting familiar with the equipment. Um, every now and then that first stand turns into a crash course because we end up calling coyotes in, and
Yeah.
so they get a quick lesson. And
Yep.
I've seen that go really well and really bad.
I'm sure.
I can think of some guys from Pennsylvania a few years ago. Uh, they had never hunted with thermal. We pull up to the first spot. I was going to let them shoot the guns ahead of time, just verify zero. And I've never had one lose zero either. But a few times throughout the season, I'll just double check, make sure everything's good. So, guys, we're going to go this. And as we're pulling into the place, I'm like, there's a family group of coyotes here. We may call this before we go shooting the place up. And I think I called like 4 or 5 coyotes in, and they killed 2 or 3 of them. And of course, their minds are just blown. First time ever looking through a thermal scope, and
Yeah.
they get to see a group work and call them in and kill them, which was cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I'm sure the expectations were high for the rest of the night.
Yeah, it sets the bar high when you start out that way. I call that the first stand curse. You kill
Yes.
first stand and don't end up seeing it the rest of the night.
What's funny about that is me and the guys I hunt with, we say the same thing. We killed one on the first stand. We got the first stand curse.
Might as well go home.
And that's the way to stay optimistic after the first stand too. You didn't kill one on the first stand. You're like, all right, guys, we're
Yeah,
avoiding the first stand curse. So it's
we
gonna be
talk
a good
about
night.
predator hunters are a superstitious bunch.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. Um. Okay. So what other gear are you taking with? You're taking.
Uh, Fat boy tripods.
Yep.
I run the two sections, and they're ball heads. Or they're excuse me, they're leveling bases. Um, so yeah, one shot rifles, Fat Boy tripods, Fox Pro X24 MFK edition. Run 100%. I won't say 100%. I like Fox Pro's Volsqueak female sorehouse. There are a couple good sounds on their library that I like. There are other guys in my area also running an MFK edition call. So if I know they're leaning into those sounds, it's nice to have the Fox Pro sounds too.
Yep.
As far as gear outside of that, I mean, that's really it. I'm pretty bare
Yeah.
bones, man. I don't.
Yep.
If I'm not using it, I've got a Phoenix headlamp. Like, I don't have any excess stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to think what I've always got on me.
Yeah. I didn't figure. I didn't. I guess I didn't assume you would have much more than just that stuff. So
No, no, I keep it pretty simple. I'm not
yeah.
I get people that have, um, they bring all kinds of random stuff. I keep a little wind checker that I don't use half the time because I can just kind of feel where the wind is.
Yep.
I keep a diaphragm. I always keep an MFK diaphragm if I haven't lost it. I lose diaphragms regularly. I got two more last night. I lose them regularly.
Yep. I do the same thing with my turkey diaphragm, so I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm bad about it. I don't lose turkey diaphragms, just predator hunting diaphragms.
Yeah. Well, the thing about predator hunting seems like to me is you're always. It seems like as soon as you get one, it just you. That's when you're in a hurry. You pick it up, get to the next stand. You're killing night. You're killing the night. With all the time you waste. So you're trying to move to the next stand.
The day
Uh,
hunts. We'll be walking out of a stand on day hunts. And of course, I try to walk in front. Um, and the clients will be like, "Hey, you drop this." I'm always dropping stuff. Always.
yeah. My buddies do the same thing to me. I'll turn around. I'll get to the truck and be like, "Oh, I dropped my glove," or they'll be like, "Here you go, picked it up for you, 100 yards back there."
Yeah. Oh yeah. I wear the the thinner gloves that have the open finger and thumb.
Yep.
And I think I've got three non-matching pairs where I've had to, I'll lose one, have
Oh
to
yeah.
order another one and have a spare. And then, yeah, I've got a little pretty good mix and match going on with
Yeah.
those.
Totally. I totally can relate to that. So yeah, I'm the same way. Um, when you go to a night on a night, how long is it? Do you have like a set period of time? Is it like
Yeah. So I base my hunt on 6 hours.
okay,
And the reason I do that is I have to keep a schedule. I have to. I work third shift. I'm going to sleep for 7 hours after I'm done. I'll get up and do my day and then meet clients later.
I
Um,
got you.
and I guide every night except for the deer firearm seasons, which equals about a week, 7 or 8 days. Um, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, and any like detrimental weather.
Yeah.
So I guide a 4 month season. I guide a lot.
Yeah.
I have to keep a schedule.
Yeah.
If I don't, the older I get, the harder that is. And
Yeah.
it's believe it or not, night season's actually easier on me than the day season because we're locating a lot of times before the night before we go hunt, so we get 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Uh,
Right.
which I think I'm going to kind of shift how I do that going forward. Which um, I going forward too. I plan on guiding a little less,
Right.
and leaning more into the YouTube video media side of things,
Yeah.
which is fun for me. That's where my heart lies right now. Like getting, I want to produce video that's like I want people to see it the way I see it. When you've got a coyote screaming at you at 15 yards, just on the edge of the cover, it's hard to convey that through a camera.
Yeah.
It's that's where, to me, I'm at the point where that's more interesting to me than killing anything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do. I've watched a lot of your videos, and some of them are just, I mean, they're all good, but like they're just, some of them are so crazy, and obviously I'm sure you get comments and get whatever, all kinds of different stuff. But if you guys haven't looked at it yet, you'll have to check out the YouTube channel. It's just Close Encounter. It's
Predator hunts. Yeah.
Close
Just close
Encounter. Yeah,
predator hunts. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, there's all kinds of good videos on there. Shotgun kills. There's your Kansas hunts that we were just talking about. I know I saw those. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff.
I'm sitting on, I couldn't tell you how many terabytes that I have to edit still. I think I took my notepad and kind of broke down how, 2 or 3 stands per video. I think I've got something like 30 full length episodes that I have to edit
Oof,
from this year.
oof.
So I need some bad weather and some screen time is what I need.
Yeah, for sure. Um, One thing I was thinking of too, you mentioned it a little bit, but what are the conditions where you're like, we can't go tonight?
So part of being a guide is wanting it to be a good experience for the hunter.
Yep.
Just because the conditions suck to be in doesn't necessarily mean that the hunting is going to suck. I have seen, and another part of it is I guide when clients can go. I'll hunt in anything. I'll say, hey, your hunt's in 3 days. The weather looks like crap. It's going to be 30-mile-an-hour wind, blowing snow, sleet, whatever. It's going to suck. The hunting might be bad because of it. If they're like, hey, I can't reschedule, we'll make the best of it. We're good. We want to go. We just want to try to do the best we can. Cool. Let's go. So, because of that, I've seen really good and really bad hunting in every condition you can think of.
Yeah.
High barometer, low, rising, falling, wind, perfectly still, cold, hot, 0 and 100. Like you name it, I've hunted in it. We've hunted in
Yep.
tornado warnings, like
Right.
and killed them in storms, like in
Yep.
thunderstorms. I've also seen that completely shut things down. Um, so there's a lot of, and it's anecdotal. It's just my experience, but that sample size is bigger than most people are going to get because most
Yep.
people will cherry pick the better weather,
Yep.
you know, the more comfortable conditions to hunt in. So I'll say this: I don't like change. Okay, for example, now our coldest night that we have had so far here has been like 38.
Yep.
If we get a night where it drops down into like the low 20s or teens and the temperature plummets, wind picks up a little bit, for the first couple of nights, I would imagine the hunting is going to be slower. Those big changes a lot of times take them a day or two to acclimate.
Yeah.
So big temperature drops. Um, if a storm is going to blow in, say we get some kind of winter storm, I don't want to hunt the first night. Let them acclimate for 2 or 3 nights, and if we get that consistently, then I want that regular weather. Man, I just want constant, mild, moderate, like plain Jane weather with no big changes. That
Yep.
to me is perfect. I don't like the concept of before a storm, after a storm. The other night we had a storm blowing in, and we had coyotes moving all night in front of it. And storm passes through, and then afterwards we could not buy a coyote.
Yeah.
And I've seen the inverse of that, and it's like you just never know how it's going to affect them.
Yeah.
People have a lot of theories based on their anecdotal experience. My theory is you don't know until you get out there. Like I've seen so much good and so much bad and everything that like it's coin toss.
Yeah.
But that change is something I want to avoid. Now, okay, so here's a good one. Um, I've had a few nights where I've killed double digits hunting solo in Illinois and in Indiana. Right, every one of those was late December. The ground had frozen solid for 3 or 4 nights.
Yep.
And then we had a night after that where it warmed up to like 45 degrees. The ground thawed. Um, the mice and rodents came out. Coons were out in the field. Everything started moving again. A little bit hazy, a little bit misty, a little light rain. And those were some of the best nights I ever had. So it's like that once that shock wears off from the change in weather, is man, it's going to be great.
Yep.
Those are the times that I really like. I like that warm up. It used to be people would say, "Oh, the colder the better," right? Remember hearing that when we were kids?
Yep.
The
Yep.
old timers would talk about, "Oh, the colder the better." Cool. They weren't hunting at night. They were hunting in the daytime. And I feel like if the weather is colder, the coyotes are probably moving in the daytime where it's going to be the warmest part.
Yep.
Um, because ultimately, too cold is too cold, and things will freeze to death. And I think here we don't get long periods of sustained cold. So I think a lot of times those first few real hard freezes where it drops into the teens or lower, I think they're just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
They just hole up. I mean, they'll move
Yep.
if you're close enough to them. That's where I think proximity is a bigger factor.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you got to be right on top of them.
Yep. No, I absolutely 100% agree with everything you just said. This is one thing that I've been saying, and like people have, I've tried to like not tell people. I'm not a big like I'm going to tell you what to do and it's going to work. Like I'm not that way. I'll just tell you, hey, this is my experience. Take it how take it how you want it. But my experience has been the front half of storms were usually not always, usually good or usually better. But again, I've seen it where they're completely dead,
Mhm.
but what I have seen very in a lot, many cases right after like a big snowstorm, th- is when I have seen just absolutely cannot buy one. And that's
Yeah.
one thing that I've been saying. Me and the guys that I hunt with, we've been saying this for the last probably several years. And like to break that mold of like, I think this is the whitetail hunter in us that, us being
Mhm.
whitetail hunters, at the core as we grew up, as a whitetail hunter, as soon as that snow's done, that front passes through, the deer are going to be moving. So I think that people just naturally assume that everything's going to be moving. And I have found in my experience that just is not the case with coyotes. And I always have said that second day after the snow is
Mhm. Once they
always
back, yeah,
things are going to turn on. And
I
that's
agree.
awesome hearing you say that because that's what I've been saying for, saying, but like I never really, you never really know because then all of a sudden that one day you go out for a drive after the snow's done and all of a sudden there's coyotes everywhere and you're like, dang it, I guess I should have been out. But
Same with the moon. I've had phenomenal nights on a full moon, and I've had terrible nights on a full moon.
I was just gonna say that to you when you said about how you hunt, and I was like, well, yeah, you obviously take the full moons off. You can't kill coyotes at night in the full moon.
I talked to Chris Robinson from Night Crew
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, and we were having a conversation. They had done an episode called "The Villain."
Yep.
I don't know if you saw that, and it was all
I
about the
did.
full moon. And he said something uh, pretty hit home. It's like, when we go out and it's a full moon and we do bad, the moon. But when we have a great night on the full moon, it's like, oh, never, like, oh, thank you, like, we
Yeah.
don't. So which is it? And I
Right.
like, hey, I've seen great and terrible. I've had coyotes walk within 20 yards of us at night on a full moon,
Yeah.
and it just, it is, we always want to blame something.
Yep.
But like I said earlier, ultimately, there are so many factors that we can't control.
I totally agree. That's probably the one of the most common things that I hear people say to me is about full moons, just about how I've I've never seen a coyote in a full moon. I've never called in a coyote in a full moon. Just like all this crazy stuff, and I'm just like, sometimes maybe I'm like, I wonder, like, is it just your like, do you just go out there with a mindset that you're not going to kill one and you don't put yourself in position,
Think
or
think think about this, right? And because, like I say, I try to I analyze everything by nature,
yeah,
right? When a client comes for a hunt, in 6 hours, we generally do 8 to 10 stands, depending on the night and how it goes, right?
yep,
I got to throw a dart. I got to pick 10 properties, 10 fields out of like probably close to 1,500.
yep,
I have to pick 10. and hope that there are coyotes within a callable distance on those 10. That's a pretty small sample size. If I would have just picked 10 different properties that night to go and hunt instead, would we have seen coyotes on all of them? Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe we get out and they're 400 yards away on every stand at a perfect distance for us. And they
Yep.
don't. And we have a lot of times where we get out of the truck and they're just standing in the field looking at us. That's
Yeah.
really common. Really, really common.
Yeah.
In Illinois, our guns are cased and they're unloaded, and we have to get out, and it's a process getting everything out, which is fine. I prefer it that way. It's safer.
Yeah.
Even if we could have loaded guns in the truck, I wouldn't. I know too many guys down south who have holes in the floorboards of their truck because of loaded weapons in their
Yeah.
vehicles. So,
Yep.
and I've seen every spectrum of firearm safety when it comes to clients too. So
Right.
I don't, but having those are all factors. Coyotes in the field, they see you pull up. They happen to be downwind already when you get out. Like there are a lot of factors that can stop you from being successful.
For sure. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. What are some common, like, when you're traveling to hunt, you're going to Kansas, you're going to wherever, anywhere. I guess it doesn't really matter, but how does your approach and how does I guess your game plan change based on where you're at?
So I have a theory on this. I think an eastern predator hunter can take their eastern coyote hunting tactics and go west and be successful. I think western coyote hunters would struggle bringing their western tactics to the east and trying to hunt them here. And
Yep.
it's not because one animal is smarter than the other or harder to hunt than the other. Like a coyote is a coyote is a coyote. They will consistently do the same thing based on the terrain that they're in.
Yep.
Eastern coyotes are going to use the cover more. They're going to use that cover to circle downwind. Coyote in the mountains of southeastern Idaho, where I've hunted, they're going to use those hillsides to circle to get downwind without you maybe ever seeing them.
Right.
The Kansas coyotes, those things are, they are, most of them were just straight line to the call. It
Yep.
seemed like in the daytime, they wanted to use their eyes more than their nose.
Yep.
They wanted to see what they were looking for. They'll stand up and look and hop over that tall grass trying to see the sound.
Yep.
And I think just because going the long way around versus night hunting, they have to use their nose, right? I think that's where we're going to get winded a lot more at night than we are in the daytime. But the benefit of night hunting is if I start here, the wind's doing this, coyotes are in front of me, and I see them start to circle, I can just pick up and meet them where they're going. I can
Right.
come 100 yards off, and instead of them being at 300, now they're at 200. We do that a
Yeah.
lot. We're super mobile.
Yep.
But as far as traveling, no, I don't. I'm notoriously bad about not planning at all. Like, I will find a place on public land. I'll call them up. Hey, can I tent camp there? Is it free? Cool, even better. So I'll
Right.
go and I'll put a tent down and I'll be like, okay, do I want to try to find public or do I want to knock on doors? I'll
Yep.
do a little bit of both. I just go. A lot of times I'll spend the first 2 nights locating and finding the coyotes first, and then I'll get access to them because I don't
Right.
want to just go and blind call a bunch of places.
Right.
One thing I learned about Kansas is the population's high enough you can blind call without scouting ahead of time.
Yeah.
That's one of the big east versus west things. If you're day hunting in the east and you're blind calling, people come and blind call my area in the daytime, they might see a coyote in one in every 20 stands. If I didn't scout ahead of time, I would not be able to do what I do. The scouting is 100% the key to success.
Yep.
But if you go to Western states, a lot of Western states, they have 1 million acres of public land. If you're willing to go in and do the hiking, you can get into areas where most people aren't willing to go to.
Right.
And they have a high enough population where you can just go. Just, if you got big public land, just every mile and a half, do another stand.
Yep.
Just grind them out. Crack out 20, 30 stands in a day. Here in the East, we have to drive between stands and we might be dealing with a 40-acre field or, that's 440 yards wide, or an
Yep.
80-acre field or, we don't have these it was funny looking at Onyx in Kansas, and the way the plat lays out, it's in squares and rectangles, just like it looks here.
Yeah.
But here you click on one and it's like a 40 or an 80, or every now and then it'll be something bigger. You click on one up there, it's like, oh, 640.
Yeah.
And that's a medium size.
100%.
like,
100%.
like, wow, that's a ton of acreage compared to what we get to deal with here.
Yeah.
Property lines and roads save a lot of coyotes here.
Yes.
A lot. Roads save dozens every year because they'll hang up 30 yards away and we can't shoot across the road, or I don't have that side. We can't just walk over there and shoot them.
Yeah. Or like in my area where there's buildings, there's
Yeah.
the coyote comes out and the only place it stops is right in line with that barn
House.
or that
Yeah.
house or something. And
Yeah.
maybe you missed your opportunity, or maybe they stopped there and they spooked, or maybe they
Yeah.
smelled you, whatever. But
We get a lot of clients from the Northeast, and Pennsylvania is a great example. Parts of Ohio, um, the Carolinas are that way. There's more. Well, anyway, they deal with a lot more population density, human population density.
right.
So, they may be hunting a coyote in a neighborhood,
Yeah.
like an open area next to a little woodlot surrounded by subdivisions. And it's like, I don't know if I would even mess with that. Like,
No.
could imagine my 243 going off with houses that close.
Right.
Here in
Yeah.
Illinois, it's 300 yards. We have to be 300 yards. I try to stay at least double that just to be polite.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not too close to any buildings either. Yeah, I think ours is 100 yards. I think we have to be 100 yards from occupied, but either way, it's just that's the thing that I always notice, or that feel, and when I'm in Kansas or wherever in the West, is like,
You go 10 miles between houses.
yeah,
10 miles without seeing a house.
we hunted last year. We were out there. We hunted for an entire night from sun went down to the sun came up. We never saw a vehicle. Period.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't think that the coyotes feel a little more comfortable out in the field, or
I've got a video that I still have to edit. I wish I had the chaos of it all on film. So we set up tree row to our back, open field in front of us, draws and all that stuff, right? Road is to the left. The coyotes howl across the road. And I'm like,
yeah,
the truck is parked right between us and them. The wind is good. I'm like, here's what we're going to do, guys. I'm going to run over there. I'm going to take the truck. I'm going to drive it like 300 yards down the road. We're going to come back. We're going to move down the tree line closer to the road. I'm going to put the call out here in the middle of the field, but further back to pull them across the road. So we do this, and those things literally ran down the road. My truck up the hill. They ran down the road, finally crossed over, middle of the day. We're talking like noon.
Yep.
You will not ever, I won't say ever, if somebody does that here, they've got the area's dumbest coyotes. Like,
right.
There are too many people here and too much traffic and too many factors that keep them from doing that.
Yes.
They don't like to break cover quite like that compared to places like Kansas.
Yeah, we saw the same thing last year, running down the roads, running past the truck, running. I mean, we're just like,
this is daytime, middle of the day.
Yeah, we've seen the same thing, and at night even crazier. But you're like, sometimes you're like, I don't know which way to face, because I don't know where, where right, or you're facing this way, and all of a sudden somebody looks at the back door. They're like, hey, there's one coming from the other side of the road. Like,
and out there you'll have like waist high grass. And here, our coyotes don't stay in the grass. There's timber.
Yeah.
Not there, they'll just be laying in the grass. So you start calling, you're like, there's not going to be a coyote within a mile here. 30 seconds in, here comes one hard charging.
Yeah.
And I haven't decided if I'm going to post it or not, but I had one stand where the buckle on my pack, because I carry all my camera stuff, the buckle broke. I got lazy and I'm like, I'm just going to carry everything in my arms. So I get all the way out there, like a half-mile hike in. I get out there and I'm facing just this open grass field, and I'm in cut corn, right? I'm like, we'll try it, see what happens. And I realized I forgot my tripod for my gun. So it was like some self-imposed punishment. I said, I'm just going to call this and film it and see what happens.
Yep.
I called this coyote back and forth like 4 times. Could have killed it all day long. But I'm just like, they just lay in the grass out there. And they don't do that here. They're in some
Right.
kind of thick timber cover in the daytime.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes back to how they use their terrain.
Hmm.
They're consistently using their terrain out that way out there versus
Right.
in the east where they like the timber as cover.
Right. Yeah. No, I've agree. I am honestly completely agree with everything you've been saying. It kind of reiterates a lot of the things that I think and have thought and told people at times when they ask. Do you stand during the day too?
Yeah.
I
No,
thought so.
if I'm and part of that is the camera.
Yeah.
I want the camera to be a little more elevated so I can see better. But the more I do it, the more I've got. This is going to sound crazy, but I've gotten to where even if I don't have cover to stand
Yeah.
against, I'll stand in the wide open with my tripod and my gun on a tripod and my camera on a tripod and call coyotes in and kill them.
Yeah. I saw your Kansas video. That's what made me want ask you, but I
And
saw that one.
most people are, and that goes back to having a willingness to watch one walk away in exchange for learning something.
Yeah.
I'm learning that, okay, I can set up a little more exposed. Back in the day, it was like, you got to have all this. Like, there are guys still that are like face paint and ghillie suits and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And they, if you like to dress up like that, cool. It's 100% not necessary at all.
Right.
And it's, some guys are into that, but I'll go out there in a t-shirt and jeans and call them in, literally standing in the open with a tripod and a camera on a tripod.
Right.
Um,
You do that in Illinois too?
yeah,
And if you're day calling?
yeah, yep. I'm almost always standing. Now, sometimes I'll sit with a shotgun. Now, if I'm just hunting and not filming, yeah, maybe I'll sit. But the thing is, like with a rifle, if that coyote swings too far left, you're pivoting around
Yeah.
your tripod and you have to pick it up and move it. And that's just more movement for the coyote to pick up on. I find if I just stand and I'm really cautious about my movement and only moving when he's looking away from me, that's what'll get you is your movement.
Right. That makes sense. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. And also, yeah, I could totally see that with the camera. Yeah, I feel like I'm always like in the daytime. The other thing too that I see and notice a lot more in the daytime is it seems like the ones that I call in, like they're committed, they're coming. Like it seems like more so you might call them in less, like you might call them in on less stands, you might whatever, but it seems like the ones you do get to come in, they're coming. Like, they're coming
Yeah,
in.
I mean, night hunting is going to be significantly easier than day hunting.
Yeah.
Just by the nature of the animal. The animal
Yep.
is more nocturnal by nature, right?
Yep.
But yeah, that's and I think the big factor for me, going back to proximity, is that I've located at night. I have a pretty good idea where they are. I can get close to them before I ever turn the call on.
Yeah.
And starting off close to them makes a big difference.
Right. How do you what does your locating process look like?
Oh, it's pretty easy. I go to a place that I'm like, okay, maybe I'll hunt this property. Let's go see if there are coyotes there. So I'll drive. I don't hide the truck. I don't do any of that stuff. I pull up right next to the property, and I will run a lone howl, a pair howl, and a group howl. Um, so I'll run, say, like Boone Lone Wine howls.
Yep.
Give them a minute. If they don't answer, I'll run like sister pair.
Yep.
If they don't answer, I'll run like Happy Yappy Family Group. They don't answer, cool, move on. But if they do answer, and a lot of people think it's just, oh, you're just hearing if there are coyotes there. No, I'm thinking about where are they? Where are they topographically? Where are they with what the wind's going to be when I walk in? Where are they? Are they on the south side of the tree row or the north side of the tree row? There's corn on one side, there's beans on the other. They're in the corn, the wind's out of the south, corn's on the south side. Cool. I can walk down the north side of that tree row, get halfway down, bust through the tree row, get on the other side, set up, and pull them directly to the edge with the wind in my face and shotgun them.
Right.
So you're using the information they're giving you to set up at a closer distance to elicit a more aggressive reaction.
Right. And coming back to what you said earlier too, another thing that you're trying to keep in mind too is, hey, what are you hearing?
Yeah.
From what you said earlier, you're like, hey, that's a family group, that's a transient group, whatever.
Yeah. And
Sounds like that's probably another thing that factors into your decision.
for me, locating is really a daytime thing. Um, so I'm locating at night to know how to set up better the next day. The same concept applies if I'm in an area where I got a bunch of properties, right? They're
Yep.
all within half mile, just sprinkled throughout the area. If I stop at property A and I hear coyotes about a mile and a quarter over there, I can look at my map and be like, I've got that. I can get downwind of them. It's the same
Yep.
concept. It's the same
For sure.
concept. But it just happens while I'm calling, so it's the same idea. And technically, you are locating coyotes,
Yeah.
and what that does, it allows you, because I'm not going to call those coyotes from a mile and a quarter. Not here, not ever. They're
Right.
never going to come that far. I won't say never. They're probably never going to come that far.
Yep. I
But
agree.
it allows me to go over there and have a better setup that gives me a higher percentage of killing them, a better
Yeah.
chance.
Yep. Totally agree. I'm always doing that when we're on stand. Like I'll hear them and I'll pull my Onyx out and be like,
Mhm.
okay, all right, yep, that's where they are. This is where I think they are, or and do the same thing. There's sometimes that's been, some of my most successful nights where I had a plan. Hey, I'm going to go this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, and then I went to this spot, and all of a sudden I heard them here and here, and
Yeah.
all my plans went out the window, and I
Yep.
just went to those and knocked them
Last
out.
season, I had Jake from One Shot, and then my buddies Justin Repke and Nate Standifer. We opened the night season and filmed and made an episode and all that. But there was, I think it might have actually been the very first stand in Illinois last year. Howled, and I heard coyotes howl at a distance, and I'm like, that sound like they're like a mile and a half. So I look on the map, and I'm like, there was a family born in that area, like within a half mile of there. So I was like, we're going to go over there. So we get over there, we get out, and they were actually a little further than that. They were about 400 yards further away than I thought, and we ended up calling them in and killing them. And it's a very useful tool. I think a lot of guys, um, particularly in areas where there are high population densities,
Right.
I think a lot of them, I don't know if they don't understand the value of locating, or they don't understand why we're locating. Um, Obviously, all states are not created equal when it comes to coyotes.
Yep.
Uh, Texas and Pennsylvania could not be any more different when it comes to coyote populations.
Yeah.
There are a lot of states I've hunted in that have a better population than Illinois.
Yeah.
Uh, like I said, Kansas, I can go blind call Kansas and call coyotes on 50% of the stands.
Yeah.
Here, I'm not going to do that. Not in the
Right.
daytime. Absolutely not.
Yep.
So, like, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about why some guys prefer to locate. If I'm day hunting here in Illinois, I say here, I'm in Indiana right now, but in Illinois, um,
Yeah.
I won't go day hunt if I don't locate.
Yeah.
It's not worth my time to go out there and blind call stands and just, look at the dirt, because that's probably all I'm going to see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, but it all comes back to that proximity that you talked about too at the beginning. Like you're looking for proximity. If there's one thing that you're trying to key in on, it's proximity. And that's probably, I guess from listening to you, that's probably one of the, your most important factors to what you factor into your plans.
Yeah. I tell my day clients before we start, at some point, we're going to walk into a spot, and you're going to think there's no way we haven't bumped them, and there is no way this is ever going to work, because we can see 5 yards and we're trying to pull a coyote into that specific spot.
Right.
Like, point your shotgun right there, because that's where we're going to kill it.
Right.
But as locating is what allows us to do that.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Mhm.
And I think one thing that so I used to do a lot more locating when I was younger. And one thing, so just from hearing you, so you're basically gonna locate them today to hunt them tomorrow,
Yeah,
essentially.
so I would go out tonight, find them tonight, and it's a lot easier now that the sun sets so much earlier.
Yeah. Yep.
In the summer months, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock before it gets
Yep.
dark. we find our groups. It's 2 o'clock. I got to drive home. We got to meet up by sunrise. I'm like, I'm killing myself slowly.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'm gonna go tonight. And now, if it's summertime and I've got a family group, say I locate a bunch Tuesday night, I would feel really confident going in there even Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
Yeah.
and that family group will be, so long as the terrain makes sense and the wind makes sense still, where I'm not going to go in and blow them out if they've moved 100 yards, 200
Yeah.
yards. Um, well, look at Tori's videos are a really good example of this because
Yeah.
he has timber the way I have cornfields.
Yeah.
You just flip flop them. A lot of times he'll howl, they'll answer back, and he'll move to them because that proximity is such a huge factor.
For sure.
I don't have that luxury of I have to walk through a 8 foot tall cornfield and not blow them out of there. So
Right.
I have to get close enough the first time because moving is going to be a lot harder. That's why to me locating is so important. But
Yeah.
that's also why I've got, dozens of videos where we set up and howl, and the group comes out and howls and runs over us is because we're
Yeah.
so close to them.
For sure. Yeah. No, you're 100% spot on. And how often do you, I guess maybe you don't stay to find out, but how often, like when you are locating, do you get a response? And like I said, maybe you're not looking, maybe you don't stay to find out, but how often do they come?
It's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Um, if I can do it, um, I try to leave a very small imprint. So I don't go walking circles around my truck and leave a bunch of back trail and all that. Like if I get
Yeah.
out, my boots touch the ground and they stay in the same place until I leave. Like
Right.
I'm not leaving a bunch of scent. But it's not uncommon that out of a group, one or two of them will come and check it out.
Right.
But I don't know unless they specifically see me at the source of the sound if they'll correlate. So if I locate, they howl, I leave, they come out, they check it out, they smell that a human's been there. I don't know if they're going to connect that sound, the howls, to a
Right.
human being there.
Right.
A lot of guys think that by howling, you're giving up your position and all that. They don't know that it's a human tricking them. You know,
Right.
they think it's coyotes howling. So they're not making that human connection unless they're like literally staring at you at your truck,
Yeah.
howling at them. Which
Yeah.
if I get out and I see them out in the field, cool, I got what I need. Like,
Yeah. You don't need to do anything else.
yeah, if that field is short, like if I'm around where I hunt, winter wheat has become more of a thing. So
Yep.
that wheat will get cut and planted in late beans. So I'll actually have some open fields come like June, July,
Yeah.
uh, before the beans get too tall. A lot of times those connect to cornfields.
Right.
If you're in an ag area, most people would be surprised to see how much the coyotes live in the cornfields. They live in the
100%.
corn. So a lot of times I'll stand out there and I'll stay a little further back and I'll locate and I'll watch the coyotes run the edge of the corn,
Yep.
uh, against that short bean field. I'm like, okay, that's all I need. Or I'll get out and I'll see them out in the field and I'll watch them for a little bit. And I got a real problem with like, if they don't know I'm there, I'll hang out there for hours just watching them.
Right.
Uh, unless I have to find more groups for clients. But if I'm just scouting for myself, I'll sit there and learn something from them.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, for sure. What I used to do when I was younger, we used to go around, locate, and then we would take off and go hunt them right away.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked sometimes, but it also, a lot of times we'd run into them walking in or, something. And eventually I got away from doing that just because that was happening more and more and more was I was running into them on the way in or, whatever. And I was just boogering them.
A lot of times they'll come to those howls. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, but that makes complete sense to me. And I would, like I said, if you howled and they howled and you leave and they come check it out 20, whatever, 10 minutes later, what does that hurt? Probably nothing.
Nothing. No, I don't think it
They
does.
probably just come up and look and don't see anything and they don't see
And
nothing.
even,
Move
and,
on.
and even to that, I've got tons of videos where I've taken my scanner with me to go locate in the summer months.
Yep.
had coyotes come out, and I'll just record them in the scanner, man. They'll walk right up to the truck. Sometimes they'll kind of see me and try to figure out what I am. Sometimes they'll win me, but um, because of the family dynamic, their home range is really small. And
Yeah.
it takes a pretty big catalyst for them to want to move the family group around.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I've had them come out and do that. Oh, I just re-edited my YouTube intro,
Yeah.
and on the tail end of that, I've got a little clip from me scouting this summer where I found a family group. It was adults and pups mixed, and I think there were 8 of them. And
Yep.
I messed with them, howling, getting them to howl back, video. I mean, they were within 15 yards of me. They had no clue. We went back and shotgunned them like a week later, the
Huh.
same exact spot.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, I believe it. I know they stick pretty tight in those spots. Um, yeah, and unless you can really bust them up or you've really messed something up. I mean,
You,
yeah, you gotta mess them up pretty bad
there
to get.
has to be like major environmental factor or major human intrusion to get.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yep. No, I agree. Um, okay, I got one more question for you before we wrap it up, but I know you've sort of laid this picture out throughout this whole thing, which has been amazing. But the one question that I like to ask people is, what's one thing that makes you different than the next guy? And I know you've mentioned a few things I think that do make you different, but maybe kind of lay those few things out that you think, hey, this is what I do different, and this is why, you know, I might have an edge, or maybe I am successful, more so than the next guy.
Um, I would say 2 things, and one of them might be a factor that other people can't control. Um, this now is my full-time job. It's all I
Yep.
do. The amount of effort that I put into studying their behavior, studying their biology, their life cycle, scouting, the amount of time I put into the equipment, picking up land, doing things with a handicap. Um, but I would say the effort that I put into the entire process, and a lot of guys, they work a full time job, they work overtime, they have young kids. I don't. Like my kids are,
Yep.
17 and 19.
Yep.
Uh, so one, I would say the effort. A lot of times, you're gonna get the results
That you
based
put into it.
based on the effort that you put in.
Yep.
And then I would say the other thing would probably be, like I alluded to earlier, being willing to watch one walk away in exchange for learning something from it. And a big part of that is handicapping myself, doing the self filming, adding that level of difficulty, hunting them with a bow. I got an episode. I just found it. I thought I had lost it. It was in a Google Drive that I forgot about. And it is 17 and a half minutes. I'm bow hunting, self filming. And for I think like 15 of those minutes, I have coyotes in front of me 50 yards or less. And I can't get drawn because they're looking my direction. I had one walk within 4 yards of me in the video. And I'm just standing there on the tree row, literally like waiting for the opportunity to draw my bow, and I never got it. I never fired a
Right.
shot. Literally 15 straight minutes of coyotes in front of me. But man, what I learned on that stand though, like
Right.
those stands where I never fire a shot, I learned the most. I learned what I can get away with. I learned what coyotes will tolerate if they don't know that you're there.
Yeah.
Um, and that's like when you handicap yourself with the weapon that you use, you learn so much. Guys will a lot of times they'll take the first shot, not the best shot.
Yep.
By handicapping yourself, your first shot is 30 yards, So by doing that, you learn a lot about the animal.
Yeah.
And even so, go on a stand, take one bullet, call in a group, see what happens. You shoot the one
Right.
and just watch how they react afterwards.
Yeah.
People would be shocked what would happen if they would stop mag dumping on coyotes and how many more opportunities they would get.
Yeah.
Not that it isn't fun to shoot at running coyotes. It is. It's a lot of fun. But from a numbers perspective, you may kill more if you stop.
Yep, I agree.
But I would say those two things are probably, oh, yeah, I would say those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally, those are all really good points. And yeah, I mean, you, it takes a lot more, it's more than, at least to me, and obviously to you, it's your job, but to me too, it's more than just, uh, going out, hitting a few stands, calling it a night. Like if I'm going to go, I want my best chance to be successful. Like I have young kids. So my time away from home is valuable. So, so I'm trying to get the best out of every single time that I go. Otherwise, I would rather not go. Like if I'm
Yeah.
going to go out and not see anything the entire night, it's fine. Maybe if, I'm with my buddies and whatever, it's fun. But I would
But
just
you
rather.
want to stack the deck in your favor.
Right. That's exactly it. And when you said the thing about cherry picking the best days, I'm like, yeah, I do cherry pick the best days, but I can, and
Yeah.
in your situation, you are forced to
Mhm.
go and do, the wind, the weather, everything. But that's why one of the things that helped me improve so much as a predator hunter was when I started traveling and hunting because hey, you got 4 days to hunt. You're hunting in the wind, you're hunting in the weather, that stuff throws you into the fire just like, you do every day. You have clients that you have to, please and keep happy and have good experiences. And it's sort of it's similar, but obviously you're doing it every day and it's more than just a few days at a time.
And a lot of guys, they want the results, but they're not willing to put in the effort.
Yeah,
And
totally.
that's and I see that with clients too. And some clients come for a casual hunt. They just want to hang out. They want to chill with their buddies. They couldn't care less if they shoot anything.
Right.
We're having fun regardless, right?
Yeah.
But I get a lot of them. Most of them come here to learn something and to improve as a predator hunter back home.
Yeah.
And I give everybody gets the same information. And I can always tell the guys who put in the effort because I watch them evolve as predator hunters. I get to watch them from a distance through social media.
Right.
Um, and they send me pictures and I get texts and they're like, yeah, I used this tactic. I did this. I did this sequence that you told me about. I did,
Right.
which is really satisfying for me. I would, from a guiding perspective, I would rather somebody, as much as I hate to say this out loud, I would rather have somebody have a slow hunt with me and not kill anything, but still take those same tactics back home and put them to use and find success with them.
Yeah.
I'd rather them do that than have somebody kill 10 in a night, but never take the information back home and use it.
Yeah.
If they just sit on it, what are they, that to me, the satisfaction comes from watching clients go home and have success with what they learned.
Yeah.
I love that.
For sure.
That's more satisfying than having a night where we just crush them.
Yep. Yep. 100%. I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, I totally agree. Same thing for me, like just doing this and getting messages and like, hey, what's working or what should I do? And then, giving somebody a pointer, hey, this is what I would do. And then they come back and send you a picture that, hey, I look at what you told me to do worked, and that's fun for me. And, obviously you're doing this on a much larger scale with a lot more people.
Mhm.
So yeah, I could totally see that side of it. And yeah, that's rewarding. All right, well, we'll wrap it up. I'll let Joe get back to his day, and I really appreciate the time. This has been fun. This hour and 20 minutes or whatever it's been has flown by.
Mhm.
And I'll let Joe give you guys a rundown where to find him. I know I will put his YouTube and anything that he wants me to put in the description below, but you guys will have to check him out. And who knows, maybe you'll have to try to get with Joe and go on a hunt with him.
Yeah, my socials are Close Encounter Predator Hunts on YouTube. And then Facebook is just Joseph Wirth. I also have Close Encounter Predator Hunts on Facebook.
Yep.
Um, and there's an Instagram for both as well. I tend to forget about those. But the best way if you want to reach out to me is through Facebook Messenger. Um, send it through there, and maybe just, if I don't respond, maybe comment on a post that I've made or something, because a lot of stuff goes to message
Yep.
requests and I
Yep.
don't see it. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. This was a fun one.
Yeah, you bet. I'll post this up tomorrow, and this will be the kickoff of season 3. So I'm excited for what's to come for the next couple of months. All right, guys, thank you for joining me on the first episode of season 3 of the Predator Podcast. I'm excited for the season and what we got coming. I think it's going to be a great season, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. As always, feel free to send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, wherever, but find my Instagram, Predator Podcast _Drew. Let me know how you're doing. If you got any people you'd love to hear on the podcast this season, let me know. I still got some openings for episodes this season, so just keep me posted. Let me know. Love to hear from you guys. And as always, if you're in the market for thermal optics or accessories, check out Dark Knight Outdoors. Use my discount codes, and those guys will take great care of you. So we'll be back next week for another episode of the Predator Podcast. And until then, shoot straight.